What if I told you that everything happening in the world right now, the wars, the economic collapses, the political chaos, was predicted months ago? Not by a prophet, not by an analyst, but by an AI. And what it said on one specific date is so precise, so accurate, that it will genuinely make you question everything you think you know about how this world actually works. The date is September 13th, 2025. On that day, I ran a very specific and deeply researched prompt through ChatGPT, one that took me weeks to construct. I asked it a simple but loaded question. If a new world order has already been established, what happens next? What happens to America? To Iran? To Turkey? To China? To Palestine? To Pakistan? The answers I received that day were not predictions. They were a blueprint. And the world has been following that blueprint ever since. But before I share what the AI said, you need to understand something important about how these platforms actually work. ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Claude, all of these AI systems run on pattern recognition. You feed them billions of pages of data, research papers, books, government documents, websites, and they identify patterns. They recognize what happens after certain events. They predict trajectories based on historical and current data. That is their power. But here is the deeper question. Who feeds them that data? Who trains them on what to say and what not to say? Because whoever controls the data controls what the AI believes is true. These AI platforms are not neutral. They are built, funded, and trained by a small group of extremely powerful individuals, the world's wealthiest and most influential elites. And when an AI openly explains satanic symbolism in detail, but refuses to discuss certain prophetic traditions, that tells you something. It is not neutral intelligence. It is intelligence with an agenda. And that agenda, whether we call it the New World Order or global governance, is exactly what the AI revealed on September 13th, 2025. Let us start with the United States. On that date, the AI stated clearly that America's military-industrial complex would remain fully operational, built for endless wars. And what have we seen since? Conflict after conflict being ignited or escalated. The AI said domestic tensions around race, gender, and immigration would intensify. And they did, in ways that dominated global headlines. It said America would push central bank digital currencies into the mainstream. And it said America would continue using Christian Zionism as a theological justification for Middle Eastern military involvement. On September 13th, 2025, there was no major Middle Eastern war happening. Yet the AI was already describing one as inevitable. Now the part about Iran is where things become deeply sobering. The AI said that Iran would face complete military, nuclear, and economic dismantling. It identified three specific methods. First, the destruction of nuclear facilities. We have watched that unfold in real time. Second, and this is the one that genuinely shook me, it said there would be assassinations of strategic leaders and scientists. And in February 2026, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei was martyred. The AI described this months before it happened. Third, it predicted internal regime destabilization through ethnic fragmentation, specifically naming the Kurds, Baloch, and Azeris as fault lines that would be activated. The goal, it said, was to isolate Iran from Europe and break it into smaller, weaker fragments. But those who design these plans forget one thing. A wounded lion is still a lion. Palestine, the part of the story that mainstream media consistently undercovers. China. The AI's first line about China was striking in its honesty about whose perspective it was representing. It described China as a temporary ally that would eventually become a threat to be contained. Not collapsed, but controlled. Think about that language. Contained. That is not neutral analysis. That is Western strategic doctrine being presented as objective fact. The AI said China would be allowed to build its surveillance and AI infrastructure, because that infrastructure would eventually be absorbed into a global system. It predicted that China would be pushed and provoked into a Taiwan conflict this year. Not because China wants war, but because the conditions are being deliberately manufactured to force that confrontation. And with Japan now publicly stating it will defend Taiwan if attacked, those conditions are almost complete. Turkey. This is the country that I believe is the next major target. And the AI on September 13th confirmed exactly why. The goal, it said, is singular. Prevent Turkey from becoming the leadership center of a new Islamic unity. Prevent any neo-Ottoman revival. Keep the Muslim world divided. To achieve this, 4 things would happen. First, Kurdish separatist movements would be activated inside Turkey, which we are already seeing through PKK and YPG activity. Second, economic pressure and IMF interventions would be introduced to destabilize Turkey's financial system. Third, tensions between Turkey and NATO would be deliberately manufactured to isolate Ankara from its Western alliances. Fourth, Erdogan would be relentlessly demonized in Western media to erode his legitimacy on the global stage. Check every single one of those boxes against what has happened since September 13th. And now, Pakistan, the country closest to my heart, and the country the AI described with the most chilling precision. It said Pakistan's nuclear potential must be neutralized. But it was specific about how, not through military confrontation, but through debt. Load Pakistan with so much international debt that it can never fully repay it. Keep it permanently on the edge of bankruptcy without ever letting it actually collapse. Then, from that position of desperation, negotiate the surrender of its nuclear program under international peace terms. Read that again slowly. This was said on September 13, 2025. Now count how many IMF programs Pakistan has been through. Count the debt cycles. Count the conditions attached to every loan. The strategy is not hidden. It is hiding in plain sight. The AI described 4 specific events for Pakistan. First, push Pakistan toward internal civil conflict by activating the Balochistan ethnic fault line. Second, use the IMF and FATF as economic weapons to break Pakistan's financial backbone. Third, keep both the Afghan and Indian borders hot simultaneously to ensure Pakistan remains perpetually distracted and unstable. Fourth, eventually bring Pakistan to an international table where denuclearization is presented as the only path to economic survival. And then it said something that I have not been able to forget. It said, a destroyed Pakistan with nuclear weapons is the world's most dangerous scenario. A strong Pakistan is a problem for the New World Order. But a chaotic Pakistan, where the military is busy, the economy is trapped in IMF cycles, and politicians are fighting each other, that is perfect. Weak enough to control, strong enough not to collapse. Now here is the question you should be asking. How does an AI know all of this on September 13th, 2025? The answer is not that AI predicts the future. The answer is that AI reflects the plans of the people who built it and trained it. Elon Musk himself warned that AI is more dangerous than nuclear power. He said, "Whoever controls AI controls the world." Peter Thiel said technology gives a small group extraordinary power. And that small group, the global elites who fund, build, and program these systems, have fed their plans, their strategies, and their worldview into the very intelligence that billions of people now trust as neutral and objective. It is not neutral. It is a mirror of their agenda. My own analysis, everything I share on this channel, is not based on AI. It is based on Islamic eschatology, on the interpretation of world events through the lens of what our tradition has always taught us. And what our tradition teaches is this: the greatest weapon of deception in the end times is the mixing of truth and falsehood. What makes AI so powerful and so dangerous is exactly that. It contains genuine information mixed with a directed agenda. Separating the two requires knowledge, critical thinking, and a spiritual framework that no algorithm can provide. So what do we do with all of this? We do not panic, we do not despair, we pay attention. We ask the questions that the mainstream narrative does not want us to ask. We connect the dots between events that are presented to us as separate and unrelated. We understand that the chaos we see in the world is not random. It is engineered. And the first step in resisting engineered chaos is simply refusing to be unconscious about it. The New World Order has a plan. But plans made by human beings, no matter how powerful, no matter how resourced, no matter how carefully constructed, are not destiny. History is full of moments when the most powerful forces on Earth were stopped by what they could not control, could not predict, and could not buy. Our responsibility is to remain informed, remain united, remain grounded in our values, and trust that the one who controls the stars also controls the affairs of this world. The story is not over, not even close. September 13th, 2025. One date, one AI prompt, a blueprint for the entire world. And the world has been following it ever since. Share this video with someone who needs to see the bigger picture. Subscribe for analysis that goes deeper than the headlines. And leave a comment. Which part of this shocked you the most? Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.